I'm going to ask you one last time, get off my yacht. Her voice cut through the music like broken glass on silk. The hostess stood tall in her designer heels, arms folded, face cold as champagne left out too long. Around her, polished guests in linen suits and flowing gowns turned their heads, pretending not to stare, but they were all listening, phones already tilted in quiet hands. He stood near the edge of the deck, one hand resting on the railing. The waves slapped gently against the hull, but tension crackled like static in the air. The woman took a step forward, her perfume clashing with the salt breeze. I don't care what your invitation says. You don't belong here. A nervous laugh escaped someone behind her. Glasses clinked. No one stepped in. The man she was speaking to, black, mid-30s, understated charcoal suit, looked down at his drink, then back up at her, calm. Too calm. Security's coming, she added, snapping her fingers toward a nearby waiter. Unless you want to make this uglier than it already is. He hadn't said a word yet. Not one. And still the crowd had already decided. What do you think they saw? A threat. A mistake. A man in the wrong place. Because he wasn't loud. Wasn't causing trouble. Wasn't even standing near the VIP section. He was just there, existing in a space he was never meant to. Can I ask you something? Have you ever been in a room where every eye silently told you you don't belong? Have you ever had to measure every breath, every move, just to avoid confirming someone else's worst assumption? One woman in red whispered to another, "He's not even dressed for this." A man in blue checked his watch like he couldn't wait for the moment to be over. And still, the black man stood still as if he was waiting, or maybe deciding whether to walk away and disappear, or to speak. And that's when he took one step forward, lifted his chin, and said 5 words that changed everything. But those words, that moment, that was what made the entire yacht fall silent. And you'll want to hear exactly what he said, because what happened next didn't just change the party, it changed everything. Have you ever seen someone so calm the whole room forgot how to breathe? If you have, comment one word, calm. Or just tell me, what would you do if you were in his shoes? But hold on tight, because next, I'll take you back to the moment he first stepped on that yacht, and why that hostess was already watching him long before she spoke. He'd been on luxury yachts before, dozens, in fact. But this one was different. It wasn't the length of the deck or the shimmering lights. It wasn't even the way the champagne chilled in glass buckets near the piano. It was the way eyes moved when he walked past. Eyes that flicked up, down, paused, scanned, as if they were doing math. Price of shoes, watch, skin tone. He stepped onto the yacht just before sunset, invited by a business partner who said, "You've earned this, man. Come enjoy what you built." What he built, because 10 years ago, he was washing plates on the docks just a few piers down, watching these same boats sail out full of people like her. People who'd never imagined the boy from the kitchen could end up funding 3 of the logistics firms that handled 70% of their overseas shipments. Funny how no one asked how he got his invitation, only whether he should have had one at all. As he climbed the steps from the dock, he'd already noticed her, the hostess. Stunning dress, perfect posture, champagne smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was laughing at something until she saw him. And in that instant, her whole face changed. Just a flicker. But it was there. That flash of confusion, then dismissal, then calculation. You know that look, don't you? Like someone trying to figure out if you're here to serve or be served. Have you ever had a stranger look at you and you knew they'd already decided who you were? If yes, you're not alone. He felt it right then. The shift in the air. Not open hostility, but cold ownership of space. Like he'd walked through a doorway he wasn't supposed to fit. Still, he smiled politely, nodded, walked forward. Because tonight, he wasn't there to prove himself. He was there to observe. But what he didn't know was that the moment he stepped on that yacht, she'd already made a silent decision. One that would humiliate him in front of everyone. And what she didn't know was who, exactly, she just dismissed. Have you ever been underestimated so badly it almost made you laugh? Or worse, almost made you believe them? Comment one word if you've ever been in that moment, seen, or drop A if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of noise. Because next you'll see what happened when she tried to erase him from the guest list in front of the crowd. And trust me, it wasn't just paperwork. It was personal. She held the clipboard like it was a weapon. Slim, silver, monogrammed. With a flourish, she flipped through the pages, eyes scanning too fast to actually read. "What was your name again?" she asked sweetly, too loudly. He said it clearly, once. She didn't write it down, just kept flipping. Behind her, two guests glanced at each other. One sipped their drink, the other smirked. "Oh, that's strange," the hostess murmured. "I don't seem to have you listed." The way she said it wasn't confusion. It was performance, like she wanted everyone to hear. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his invitation, embossed, printed, formal. She didn't even touch it, just glanced at it. "That must be a mistake," she said, smile frozen. "This is a private event. Perhaps you were meant to be on the service crew?" Someone chuckled behind him. He heard it, a soft, sharp sound that cut deeper than any insult. And for a second, just a second, he almost believed it. Have you ever had a moment like that, where someone says something so calmly cruel your own brain starts to betray you? He looked at the invitation again. It hadn't changed. Neither had the truth. Still, she stepped to the side, half blocking the entry. "I'm going to need you to step off the boat, sir. We can't have unverified guests tonight. It's a security issue." Her tone was kindness dipped in vinegar. A man nearby lifted his phone, pretending to check messages, but the camera was pointed straight at him. He felt it all. The silence, the heat under his collar, the ache in his jaw from clenching. And yet he didn't move. He stood taller, not in defiance, but in memory, because once years ago someone else had blocked the door like this. And that night had changed his life. So no, he wasn't stepping back. Not yet. Have you ever been told politely, publicly, that you didn't belong? If yes, comment 1. If not, type 0. And tell me honestly, have you ever watched someone else get shut down like that and said nothing? Because next she tries to make it worse. Call security, raises her voice. And that was her biggest mistake. Before I tell you what happened when she raised her voice in front of the entire yacht, I know you might be busy. Maybe you're watching this in between errands, or maybe you can only handle so much drama at once. But if stories like this grip you, hit subscribe. You'll want to see how it ends. Because this was the moment everything shifted. "Security," she said, snapping her fingers toward the crew deck. "Now, please." That word security wasn't about safety. It was about shame. The uniformed man approached, tall, lean, unsure. The crowd hushed. Glasses paused midair. Forks hovered above plates of sea bass and truffle oil. The guard looked at the hostess, then at the man in the charcoal suit. He hesitated. "Ma'am, is there a—" "I said he doesn't belong here." She cut in, louder. Escort him off, now. The man in the suit didn't move, didn't flinch, but his hands slowly folded behind his back. A gesture not of surrender, but of control. And still no one stepped in. No one said, "Wait." No one asked, "Are you sure?" One woman whispered to her date, "This is so awkward." The man beside her muttered, "She's doing him a favor." Cameras turned. Someone began live streaming. Another guest leaned over and said, "Just leave quietly. Man, it's not worth it." But it was always worth it. Not to win, not to humiliate, but to be seen, truly seen just once. The guard took one more step forward. He looked uncomfortable. The black man looked him in the eye and said, quietly, "Do you know who I am?" The guard froze, his brow furrowed. Then he stepped back, just half a step, but it was enough. And the hostess? Her voice wavered. She hadn't expected the question. None of them had, and that was the first crack in the facade. Do you think most people would have walked away by now? Would you? Comment stay if you'd hold your ground. Comment go if you'd walk out with your dignity. There's no wrong answer. But next he says one sentence. Just one. And everyone, including her, would wish they'd never pushed him that far. "Don't pull that card with me." The hostess's voice sliced through the stillness like a cracked champagne flute. "You people are always looking for a way in. always pretending you belong. And there it was, the moment no one could take back. The air went stiff, even the wind seemed to pause. The security guard blinked once and shifted his stance. A man near the bar lowered his drink without sipping. A woman in heels turned away like she hadn't heard. But they all had, and not one of them spoke. He could have said 100 things right then. He could have raised his voice, could have listed his credentials, could have thrown the entire yacht into chaos. But instead, he just looked at her, long and quiet, and said, "Call your event manager. Tell them the investor just arrived." That sentence, just that, you could feel the words drop like weights into the ocean. No shouting, no defense, just truth. And suddenly the room changed. Faces tensed. Someone near the buffet whispered, "Wait, what did he say?" Another voice, "Investor." The hostess stared at him. The color drained from her face slowly, like light leaving the sky. She tried to recover. "That's I don't think." But he didn't say another word. He didn't have to, because now everyone was watching her. Not him, her. Have you ever watched someone's power melt away one syllable at a time? Have you ever wished you could take back the way you treated someone too late? Comment one word that comes to mind in that moment. Shift. Because next the phone call happens. And when the voice on the other end speaks, let's just say it doesn't just confirm who he is. It exposes who she really is too. She stared at him like she hadn't heard correctly. But she had. Everyone had. Silence spread like smoke over the deck, thin at first, then choking. She cleared her throat, lifted her phone, tapped fast, fingers twitching just slightly. "Hi, yes," she said, tone clip. This is Cassandra, from the charter event on deck 7. Pause. Her voice dropped. "I have a situation. There's a man here claiming to be an investor, says he's on the guest list. But his name doesn't appear." She flinched. Whatever the voice on the other end said, it hit hard. "Yes," she said, eyes darting. "I understand." But another pause. Longer this time. And her face had changed. Like glass cracking beneath too much pressure. "No, I hadn't checked the updated list," she said quietly. I assumed. Assumed. That word. It hung in the air like a confession. The person on the other end kept speaking, and now people were leaning in. The security guard took a subtle step back. A guest near the bar turned his full body toward them. Then she slowly lowered the phone and forced a smile. Thin, fragile, empty. "Mr. Jackson," she said for the first time using his name. "Please forgive the mix-up. You're, of course, more than welcome." Now she was the one asking permission. Funny, isn't it? How fast power can switch hands. He didn't say anything, just gave the smallest nod, and suddenly she looked small. Not in stature, in presence. The crew stepped away. The guests whispered, but none of them were looking at him now. They were watching her unravel. Have you ever seen someone try to hold their dignity with both hands and still feel it slipping? Have you ever witnessed a moment where the truth undressed someone in front of a crowd? If so, comment turn. Because next a woman who once mocked him offers him her seat. And that was only the beginning. She was still standing there, holding her empty smile like a shield, but no one was looking at her anymore. All eyes had shifted. They were on him now, and not because he raised his voice, not because he made a scene, but because he didn't. He just stood there calm, composed while the entire room rearranged itself around him. The security guard gave a quick nod and vanished into the background like a bad dream. Guests started murmuring names his name. "Jackson, wait, isn't he the one who? I read about his company. They just closed a global deal. Oh God, he's the Jackson?" Then, the ripple effect. A woman in a red silk dress, the same one who had whispered, "He's not dressed for this," stood up from her table, smoothed her skirt, and with a smile sweet enough to rot fruit, said, "Mr. Jackson, please would you like to sit here? It's the best view on the boat." He looked at the seat, looked at her, and said nothing. Just smiled polite, measured, and walked past. No bitterness, no gloating, just a silence that said more than revenge ever could. The hostess Cassandra was now alone at the center, like a failed performance act, waiting for applause that would never come. Someone nearby offered him a glass of champagne. Another reached to shake his hand. And suddenly, the man who didn't belong had become the one everyone wanted to stand beside. Isn't it strange how people change when they realize you hold the keys to the room? Have you ever watched a room full of people rewrite their memories just to save face? If you've ever felt that shift, comment now. Because next he doesn't just reclaim space. He pulls out something from his pocket. That makes every guest realize just how much power they never saw. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket slow, unbothered, like a man reaching for a handkerchief, not a hammer. And when his hand came back out, it wasn't with a phone or a contract. It was a small, dark leather card case. Elegant, simple, worn at the edges. He opened it with one hand practiced and slid out a single black card with gold embossing. No names, just a logo. But that logo was enough. One guest, an older man near the piano, saw it and gasped audibly. That sound tiny, involuntary cut through the music like a cymbal crash. He leaned toward his date, whispered urgently, "That's the founding investor card." Another voice joined in, "You can't even get one of those unless you're." The whisper trailed off, because now everyone knew. It wasn't just that he was invited. He built the stage they were standing on. Cassandra the hostess stared at the card as if it had teeth. Her lips parted, then closed. She tried to recover, but her voice was threadbare now. "I wasn't aware you were affiliated on that level." He tilted his head gently. "No need to apologize," he said calmly. "You weren't expected to know." That line, it sounded kind, but everyone in the room knew exactly what it meant. She hadn't bothered to know, and that was the entire problem. Have you ever witnessed a moment so elegant, so precise, it shattered someone without a single insult? Would you rather make people remember your name or regret forgetting it? Comment logo if you've ever seen one small detail change everything. Because next one call from him flips the entire event. And this time, he doesn't speak quietly. He takes the mic. He didn't ask. He simply walked slow, silent to the front of the yacht. The crowd parted, not because he demanded it, because they knew. The music had long faded. The waves still lapped below, but even the ocean seemed quieter now. The event host, a junior coordinator holding a clipboard too big for her hands, looked up. "Why died? Do you need the mic, sir?" He nodded once. She handed it over without a word. He turned to the crowd, held the microphone like it was made of glass, not to amplify, but to reveal. Then he said, "If the person in charge of tonight's guest list is in this crowd." He paused. Let the silence fill the space. "I'd like them to explain why their primary investor was nearly thrown off the boat." Gasps, not loud, just sharp inhales, scattered like fireworks without sound. And then he did it. He tapped his phone. One contact. Speaker on. A crisp, professional voice answered. "This is Elena Caraway, Director of Events, Harborlix Global. How can I?" "Elena," he said, gently. "It's David Jackson. Just wanted you to know I'm here." Pause. Then, over the loudspeaker. "Oh my God, David, yes, we saw your name checked in. Thank you for attending. The entire event was approved by your foundation. Are you enjoying the evening?" Someone dropped a glass. No one picked it up, because no one moved. He looked toward Cassandra, whose face had gone blank. She wasn't blinking. Elena continued, unaware. "We briefed the local team that you'd have full oversight. Do let me know if there are any issues." He smiled. "No issues now, Elena. Thank you." Click. Silence. Not a soul spoke. He didn't look at the crowd. Didn't need to. Because every person there had just heard the one thing no apology could erase. Truth public, undeniable, and delivered with precision. Have you ever seen a lie die in front of its believers? Have you ever wished you could be that calm, that collected, in the face of pure insult? If yes, type one word, Mick. Because next Cassandra tries to salvage her image. But she'll learn something worse than humiliation. Is pity. She took a breath, shallow, shaky. I hope you understand, Cassandra said, voice suddenly too high, too soft. There was never any intention to, but no one was listening anymore. Because now, her words sounded like what they truly were. a performance in ruins. David didn't look at her. He was done with her. And somehow, that was worse than if he had shouted. Much worse. The crowd, sensing the shift, began to reposition themselves. One guest, earlier bold with laughter, now sipped quietly in the corner. Another man who had whispered, "He doesn't look the part," earlier turned his back entirely, as if to erase himself from the scene. And then a slow clap. One person. Then another. Not wild applause. Not celebration. Just recognition. Recognition that a wrong had unfolded in plain sight and that the one who was wronged had handled it with more grace than anyone deserved. Cassandra still stood there, holding her now pointless clipboard, her voice reduced to breath. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Jackson." He turned his head slightly, not enough to face her, just enough to say, "Not everyone gets a second chance to make a first impression." That line, it hit harder than any public call-out, because it wasn't vengeance, it was closure. And that's the thing about dignity, it doesn't need to scream to silence a room. Have you ever watched someone lose everything not because they were attacked, but because no one believed them anymore? Have you ever felt the moment when fake smiles dissolve and only truth remains? If yes, comment clear, because next he reflects on what this night really meant. And you'll want to hear that, because it's not just about class. It's about a whole system built on who's allowed in. He stood quietly on the deck, the night breeze brushing past him like a soft reminder. The city lights flickered far away, but here on this yacht the brightest light was the truth that had just been revealed. He thought about how easy it was for people to decide who belongs and who doesn't, not with loud words or hateful acts, but with silence, with invisible lines drawn in the sand, with judgments based on skin, on clothes, on where you came from. It wasn't just about a party. It was about a system, a world built to keep some out and others in. And yet, in the midst of all that, he realized something important. Power isn't just about the cards you hold. It's about how you play them, about standing tall when the room wants you to shrink, about showing grace when they expect anger, about letting your presence rewrite the story without saying a word. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of noise? Have you ever been judged before you spoke? If you have, you're not alone. But here's the thing. Sometimes the greatest power comes from simply being yourself, from refusing to disappear, from speaking your truth calmly, firmly, until they have no choice but to listen. So I want to ask you, next time you feel out of place, or underestimated, or overlooked, what will you do? Will you walk away quietly, or will you step forward and change the entire room? Comment one word that describes how you'd respond. Because the story isn't over yet. There is still one last moment, one last lesson, and that is where it gets unforgettable. He took one last look at the yacht's glowing silhouette against the night sky. A world of luxury, power, and privilege. A world that almost told him he didn't belong. But he did, and so do you. Because no one gets to decide your worth. Not your skin, not your background, not the clothes you wear. You are more than what they see, more than their assumptions. And every time you choose to stand tall, to speak calmly and confidently, you remind the world that power lives within. So remember this. Never let anyone tell you where you don't belong. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show up and be yourself. Thanks for staying with me till the end. If the story moved you, or if you've ever felt underestimated like David Jackson, drop a comment below and share your own story. And don't forget, there are many more stories like this coming soon. So hit subscribe, because the next one, it's even more unbelievable. Until then, keep standing strong, and remember you belong.